At this time, I want to invite some of our family to come and share some of their memories. My sister Susan, her son Michael, daughter Marissa, Barbara's and my daughter Becky. Who else is sharing this morning? If I left anybody out? I don't think so. Sue, you're the oldest daughter and only daughter, so we'll let you go first.
Thank you. Oh, well, David's already thanked you all, but I also want to thank you for coming to honor Mom. It's definitely a bittersweet time, especially for me and David and our family. And there are some special caregivers that are even here today, and I just want to thank you. The last several months, Mom's had some caregivers at the home, and we're just blessed that you're here and you're able to be here with us during this time. You know, I could stand up here all day and not have enough time to say how many great things there were about Mom. We all know she was a great woman of prayer and the Word, and when she said she prayed for you, every day she did. That wasn't something she just said. Every day she opened her Bible and she read and she prayed and she lifted up the ministry and all of the partners and her friends, and she was very serious about it, and she took that very serious. Her heart was so full of love. She was such a generous woman, such a giving woman. You could see it in the way that she served Dad. You know, God knew that Dad had to go home first because he couldn't live without her. He really couldn't. Mom was definitely a Proverbs 31 woman. She was a wife and mother that you could definitely trust. Growing up, Mom used to make me a lot of my clothes, which I still remember. Mom, of course, loved to cook. We'd gather together as a family on many Sundays and have a big pot of spaghetti sauce or be out in the backyard barbecuing and swimming as a family. Family was very important to Mom. She loved to bake. She definitely enjoyed the holidays and baking all the goodies. And I'm going to try to put some of those goodies together and be able to share them with all of you soon. Mom, another thing Mom enjoyed, she really enjoyed having our friends around her. And many of our friends became Mom's friends, and some of them are here today, and thank you for being here. I think one of the greatest things was Mom was a very strong woman emotionally, probably one of the strongest women I've ever met. She really was Dad's strength, as Pastor Francis shared. She was the neck that turned the head. Mom, for me, she was always available for me to talk with her. She really became my best friend, and whenever I needed anything, we would talk. I was extremely fortunate on the day that Mom passed away to be with her once again, as I was with Dad. On July 30th, she was at the hospital, and without getting into a lot of details about what happened at the hospital, the doctors just felt like what her need was, they couldn't assist her with anymore, and surgery wasn't going to be an answer, so they basically shared with me that it could be a few days, a few hours, they didn't really know. But I was in the hospital with her from about 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 10:30 at night. And some of the things that happened in the hospital room, I'd just like to share with you. I didn't know how long she was going to be. I was spending the night with her, and I was hoping to bring her home the next morning, so whatever she was going to go through, she could be at home and it could happen peacefully there. But God had another plan. But she did, while we were sitting there, the first 3 or 4 hours, we were talking, and she cried out, she said, "Morris!" And I looked at her and I said, "Mom," I said, are you seeing Dad up in the heavens? You know, why are you crying out his name? And she didn't really answer me, but there was a favorite chair that Dave and Barb bought Dad when he was here, and he used to sit in it all the time. And as soon as Dad left, Mom sat in this chair every night, and she'd watch Christian programming, and she kept pointing in the hospital room, "Take me to my chair, take me to my chair." And I said, "Mom, we're in the hospital. I know you love that chair, but you'll see your chair tomorrow." And another thing that she did is she started raising her hands up in the hospital, and she did that like 3 or 4 times, and the nurses looked at me and they said, "What is your mother doing?" And I said, "Well, she's praising the Lord. She's raising her hands up to heaven." And one of the things Mom continued to do the last couple years, she never stopped ministering. She had 24-hour care, and there'd be different ladies that came in, and I see 3 of them here today, and that was her ministry. She shared the love of Jesus with these women that came into her home. She never stopped, and we're just believing and praying that their lives will never be the same, because they won't. And, within 3 hours, Mom basically went on to her heavenly home. And the precious thing about it is that one of the nurses that came in at the very end, that came in to check on me and Mom, she was a Christian. They asked me, "Is there anything I can get you?" And I said, "Yes, can you please get me a Bible?" And so I read Mom some of her favorite Psalms, which 91 was one of them. And the nurse came in and she said, "What are you reading her?" I told her Psalm 91. So she got it out on her phone. She says, "Well, I'm a believer too." And she read it with me. And that was just such a sweet moment that we had at the very end. And I just thought you'd really enjoy knowing that the Lord placed a Christian nurse there with her and with me to the very end. And she was so peaceful. She had no pain. And honestly, she rested the last couple of hours. I said, "Mom, you don't need to keep your eyes open, just rest." And about 10:30 at night, she just went home to be with the Lord. And I know I will definitely miss her. And I just want to thank you all for your prayers and your texts and your support, and just for loving us as a family. We really appreciate it. Oh, Michael. Yeah. He said you.
All right. Well, hello, and thank you for being here today. I'm Michael Cerullo, one of the 7 grandchildren of Theresa and Susan's son. When I thought about what I'd like to say today, the one thing that keeps coming to mind is I'm just grateful. I'm grateful that God gave me the gift of such a great grandmother. Not everybody gets that gift in life, and up until 38 years old, I had one of the most amazing grandmothers that I could ever ask for. I'm grateful for her listening ear. Grandma would make time for people to talk with them. She showed genuine interest in your life, and she would pray with you. She would ask questions, and she would just be a great support to her family. I'm grateful for her kindness. She was a very loving and caring woman. She always put others before herself. I'm grateful for the example she set in how she treated my grandfather. I got to watch firsthand her love and support my grandpa and be a great wife to him. They had a really playful and loving marriage, and she set an example for what I wanted to look for in a wife in marriage. Many of us in this room wouldn't be who we are without the impact that she had on our lives. And I just wanted to share a few personal things that I loved about Grandma. Let's start with her cooking. My grandma was an amazing cook. Grandma and Grandpa were a great team in the kitchen. Grandpa was usually in charge of the steaks and the grill, and Grandma usually handled everything else. Watching them in the kitchen was really sweet. She had a way of making the house feel like a home. And we would always sit down after that and have a wonderful meal together and talking around the table. Some of my favorite things that she made were these peanut butter balls that were covered in chocolate. She made really good flan. Her mashed potatoes were excellent. But my favorite thing that she made was her pasta and meatballs and her pasta sauce. And one thing, she loved her coffee. There's a magnet still on her microwave in the kitchen. I gave her, 10 years ago. It says, "Give me coffee and no one gets hurt." So whether it was breakfast time or even like a decaf in the evening, the house always smelled like coffee and wonderful food. Much of our family time involved games on Friday nights, sitting around the table. Her and Grandpa loved to play this game called Rook. We still play today as a family. They were usually never on the same team, so it was always fun to see the competition. They playfully battle each other, and we would just sit around, eat, play Rook, and tell stories. My grandma also loved the show Wheel of Fortune, and so I loved just getting to sit down with her and try to guess the answers on the screen. I would randomly get phone calls from Grandma and Grandpa because they weren't very good with technology, so they would ask me, how do I work this DVR, and what input is the show on, and whatnot. But we loved to go to the movies together. Some of my fondest memories are her taking me by the arm and walking in slowly to the theater with a bag of popcorn and getting to sit down and laugh together in a movie with the family. Those are just 5% of the amazing memories I have with my grandma, and I'm going to miss her very much. She was a very special woman. She always put her family first, and she set the bar very high for what a godly woman looks like. And she's leaving a great legacy behind. Thank you.
My heart feels heavy, Grandma, and nothing feels the same. Little did we know that evening, God would call your name. I miss you deeply, Grandma. I don't know what to do. So many of my greatest memories start and end with you. It's not the same without you, Grandma. You made our family whole. A quiet strength, strong and tough, though compassion ruled your soul. I asked you, Grandma, how do you feel? And you told me with my hands. You had such a sense of humor. Those who knew you understand. I know my pain is selfish, Grandma. You were ready to be at peace. And now you're in God's loving arms. Your earthly pain has ceased. So how is heaven, Grandma? Is it beautiful and free? Give Pop and Uncle Mark a hug, your son you've longed to see. You taught me so much, Grandma, and now from up above, your traditions, faith, and pasta sauce will be passed on with all my love. There's so much left to say, Grandma, all the things I'm thankful for, but I'll leave it as we always did. You'd say I love you, and I'd say I love you more.
That was beautiful, Marissa. There was a birthday celebration for my grandma about 20 years ago at a big meeting, and I had an opportunity to speak, and I totally freaked out, and I passed the microphone, and I ran off the stage, and I did not want to let this opportunity go by without saying how special my grandma was and is. And so I'm Rebecca, I'm David's daughter and Barbara's daughter, and I want to share some of the things that come to my mind when I think of my grandmother. She loved roses, especially pink ones. She had an eye for design, and from the time she was young, she loved to decorate. She skipped 2 grades in school. She was smart as a whip, and when the teacher was out, she was the substitute. she was excited about all the career opportunities that women had to pursue in my generation. And she got a kick out of the fact that one of the women in charge of construction here at Legacy, well, one of the persons was a woman. And she just loved that she got to tell all the men what to do. And so I asked her just recently, just this year, Grandma, what would you have done if you could have done anything? And she said, I think I would have liked to be a pilot. And I thought, my goodness, of all the travel you've done all around the world, I never would have imagined you wanted to be behind the plane driving. Anyway, I thought that was neat. We shared a love of all things bread. It was our favorite food. If we could only have one, it would be bread. And we shared a love of trees, and we often would point out beautiful trees that we liked, and sometimes she would break out into a poem. I'll just say the first line, but I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree. And she would go on, and I just loved listening to her talk about that poem. And anyway, my earliest memory of my grandma was a time I spent the night with her. And she gave me a cookbook, and she said, pick out whatever you want, and we'll make it. Well, I picked peanut brittle, and I'm not sure why, but as an adult looking back, I think it was probably the most difficult thing in that cookbook to make. But she did not flinch. She did not tell me to pick something else out. We made that candy, and we put it in a tin, and we went to the office, and we handed it out and shared it with all the people. She made the best French toast. That was my favorite. And if you had it, you know it was so good. But I could never get it just like Grandma's. And I told her, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So she said, next time you're here, I want you to make it in front of me. And so she took the time, and I made that recipe in front of her. And she said, well, Becky, you're not frying it in butter. Butter's what makes it crispy. So there's that secret for you all. But to me, you know, she took the time to figure it out and see what I needed to do to get it right. I'm so grateful that I got to have a relationship with her as I grew into an adult, because that supportive, teaching grandmother, she really became one of my closest friends. And whether it was a chat on the phone, a drive by the ocean, she loved to drive by the ocean, or a cup of coffee and a chat, or a cup of tea, she always made me feel seen. She always made me feel heard. She celebrated me. She encouraged me. She prayed with me. I will miss these moments. She always spoke the word of God into and over every situation. She taught me what faith looks like. She taught me what faith sounds like. She taught me how to exercise my faith. And she taught me, after having done everything, how to still stand by that faith. And she believed that the greatest attribute of God was his love. And there were times when we faced things that we couldn't understand. And we would sit and talk about the love of God. We would talk about the unfathomable love of God, and we would just let it wash over us until the understanding didn't matter. She was ready to meet Jesus. She told me 3 years ago, she said, Becky, don't be sad when I go. I've lived more in one lifetime than most people could imagine. I've traveled the world over. I've had a good life. She said, there are more people waiting for me there than are left behind here. I'm ready to go. It's these words that I have on repeat in my head, because as ready as she was to go, it's never easy for us to let go. So thank you, Jesus, for my grandmother, Theresa Cerullo. Tell her that I love her and that I will meet her one day at the gates.
Thank you, family. Well, Mom was truly a special woman. There aren't enough adjectives for me as a son to describe her. Most of the family and the tributes that have been played already speak to her character. Every day I'm reminded of her influence in my life. As children, Susan and myself and our brother Mark, who's gone on quite a few years ago to be with the Lord, we'd sit around the kitchen table every morning. No matter what we had to do, it was time for devotions. It was time to read the Word. It was time to pray. It was time to memorize Scripture. And that's how we began every morning together as a family. Mom was not just mom, but she was also dad, because most of you know Dad was gone probably, as Susan and I grew up, I would venture to say, an easy 300 days out of every year. So Mom was mom and Mom was dad. And she had a strong hand in the home. I don't know if it was because all of us children were so unruly without a father figure in the home. I don't know if we lacked discipline or whether she just had stock in a wooden spoon company. But I can tell you, every trip to the grocery store was accompanied with, "I need some more wooden spoons." And we'd wince and grimace and say, "Well, you don't need that, Mom," but apparently we needed it. But I have so many fond memories of Mom. Godly woman, godly example. I'm so grateful to have had a mother like her and the example that she set for us as children and as grandchildren and as great-grandchildren. Caring, compassionate, loving, kind. She was one in a million. And I'm so grateful for the privilege I had to grow up as a son with her as a mother.